morning or evening or whatever. It's 22:34 here. So I have a challenge from a spirit in that I can. Oh, new update again. Uh huh. We should be in the very start of the new year. Budget deficit of 7 trillion, and yeah, we're at the very start. So basically, the challenge I have comes down to this: can we increase liberty while reducing problems associated with said liberty? In other words, can we lower tobacco harm programs and others, etc., like put ban tobacco to minimum so you, for example, can't sell to underage people, and then have the tobacco use increase while increasing tobacco taxation, decrease tobacco usage. There's a lot of similar things here that we are looking at by constricting one end and liberalizing the other end. Uh, you can see that our legal direct consumption has increased rather much. Here we liberalize, and here we remove the harm reduction program. And you can see our legal drug consumption is pretty high, and that's with just legalized cannabis. And that seems to be about the edge of what we can do here. But here is one of the essential questions of what I've been plagued about for the past about a year in terms of what to do with the laws here.
You saw if you've been following me for a while, in the uh,
You saw in the Madagascar model that if we reduce the age of voting and participation in society, we will see some associated problems, such as an increase in the crime rate. And that will require an increase in things like the police force. And this has led to as we improve society, a slow, steady decline in crime. And then when we do the liberalization steps, you can see that crime then rather sharply jumps up for a very short time and then continues to decrease. So you can see that crime isn't steady in a view. And we are trying to get everybody to use a bicycle because that way you get healthy. And I think executive term limits at 3 is enough. And 4 years, that's enough. That's 12 years in control. That's a little over 10 years. Unemployment benefits, I ought to scrap completely because unemployment is not something I'd want to look at. There are some programs that I think still ought to be increased by at least somewhat. How high is the Social Security? It's not very. So I think state pensions, unemployment benefits. Then next, keep that in place. I have done enough research on my own into what happens if you eat whale or dolphin flesh. I would not recommend it. Perhaps if you are the Inuit of all Inuits, you can do so. Poverty increased sharply because we reduce social care by an enormous amount. Unemployment benefits cancel. State pensions are already pretty low. Social care to maximum. Family planning I'm not going to implement right now. This is gonna end up being very costly for me. But as you can see, the retired like me mostly like the most of anybody in here, so we're gonna be chomping from them. And we will increase, if we could increase recreational drug tax, we'd increase it. Abrahos, Refuskos cannot afford. Egypt. As you can see, GDP is going down. But if I'm not entirely mistaken, unemployment is staying roughly the same. Poverty increased sharply because I removed the unemployment benefits. Because alcohol tax was still lower than maximum while alcohol usage was going down. Therefore, we can still go more liberal while increasing tax rates to keep both harm reduction and increased income and the liberalization of the nation in mind. And therefore, if we raise from what it was to here, alcohol consumption will roughly double, and this will take it from this alcohol tax will take it from 25 to about 20, and doubling will take it to about 40. This will be seeing if this model explodes when I do this. There are some more things we need to do. Where is police force? There it is. Let's go to a billion. That seems about right. Now I know what I'll do next cycle if I still have the money. Do not criticize the loans. I also like those particular loans. Whoop. Notice how much unemployment drops for such an easy amount. 8. This should be enough. Well, now we're at about even. Unemployment dropped sharply, just as it should. GDP rose a tiny bit, and we're 560 in debt. We are about to have media monopoly. I wait. Sorry, I hadn't removed the tobacco awareness campaign. That will have an effect on our economy. Free school meals. I think those are already at maximum. Yeah, they are. Okay, schools need help. I was predicting 40 and B, and I'd be willing to accept 40, but it's looking like it might be 30. try to lose the election. Damn it. So, other than the danger of violence, it does indeed seem like the general outline works. You end up generating about 3% of your nation's entire GDP. Actually, let me put up this on the other side here. So we can actually broadcast this. Okay, so you make about 2 to 5% of your nation's current income in your budget surplus if you go with the plan that we're outlining, which, if you look at it, something you can invest back into the economy at greater than, or at the very least, the rate of 1 to 1. That's about the 3 to 5% economic growth that we've been talking about for a while. You do get problems, but fortunately, these particular problems, relatively fortunately, can actually be solved by increasing taxation, not deliberalizing. So you have a specific usage of, for example, tobacco in your country.
and this usage will, persist.
You can then do one of two things. You can either start to approach it from a healthcare point of view, where you make these programs to reduce tobacco usage, tobacco awareness programs, etc., or you can raise the taxation on tobacco. This because a lot of poor people's money actually goes to basic stuff like coffee, and tobacco will slightly raise poverty. But because also rich people buy tobacco, the raise in poverty will be less than what you make in taxes, naturally. So if you divert the money you get from this particular sale towards social care, you will reduce tobacco usage and reduce poverty at the same time. And getting to the very specific golden spot where this happens is difficult and is country specific and takes effort to maintain. But if you approach tobacco, alcohol, and narcotics, I would also approach oil and uh, coffee in the same vein. I would approach those, and in the case of Britain, perhaps even tea. But I would approach the basic things which we ought to consider luxuries, but in reality aren't luxuries, are very much needed for the economy to function. If you go to Britain and take the people's tea, I guarantee you it will not function, and so on for any country. So we have these things which ought to be considered luxuries but aren't, meaning that they are not taxed as luxuries. But if you make them taxable as luxuries and are aware that you will get an increase in poverty beforehand, and then channel the money to your social care that you make from the tobacco taxes, you will see the social care actually reduce poverty, while the money that the social care is paid will not 1 to 1, but perhaps 70% to 1 return back to your budget due to the fact that your taxes are everywhere, man. So that is what we're looking at. And judging by what this game tells us, you theoretically can now proceed with the liberalization scheme that we've been thinking about. But I will advise you that there is a higher than expected chance of being assassinated in this particular plan. It is due to the nature be a lot of people will consider your actions to be immoral. So there will be a fairly high risk of assassination. But in terms of immoral swamps which we have to cross in the modern age, it isn't the worst. But keep in mind that as you liberalize, consumption will increase. And at some point, you may not be able to increase taxes without blowing up your economy, in that everybody will go abroad to buy the goods for which you have a high taxation, so the money will actually seep out of your system at such a system. But for a while, you can actually make more money while decreasing consumption without affecting people's ability to buy food and stuff like that. But that is hard. If you do it without a very soft, loving touch, you will see a lot of suffering increase in your country. But if you do it well, it is doable, but there is a risk of assassination. So be aware of it. So, in short, the general outline seems to work because you have these things like oil drilling subsidies without having mass transport and electric car subsidies. So, what you have is more consumption of oil instead of less in a situation where you already have less oil than you'd need, thus the subsidies to keep producing oil. So if you remove the oil production subsidies and produce oil only when it is efficient for you, and at the same time use the money you used to spend in oil subsidies towards hybrid car initiatives, bicycle initiatives, public transport, etc., you will have a good outcome, I think. But that seems to be what we're looking at here, that it is fuzzy in the right direction, but filled with bit holes, so be careful. But it does indeed seem like the main issue, which was can we make it moral? In that we are reducing crime and suffering while we are increasing liberalization, and we're not going boohoo man tier when we increase liberalization and somebody actually suffers. It is very inappropriate to laugh at others suffering. So, can we make this in a way where there is less crime, less poverty, less suffering, etc., while we liberalize? And that does indeed seem to be true. But there are certain economic ramifications, such as when your population actually reaches adulthood, the one that is from the family with many children, with high mortality rate, that during your government got many children and low mortality rate, before everybody realized that you can actually now have 3 kids and have a very good chance of 2 of them surviving to make their own families. So you no longer need to make 5 to 8 kids to get 2 to survive to make their own families. There is a period when people still have 5 kids and 5 raised to oldhood. But very quickly, worldwide, after a while of 5 to 5, people go meh and then go 2 or 3 to 5. Then, when it goes lower than that, there is a distinct worry in the nation. So it will be solved, maybe just not quickly. So when that particular peak of five 5 to 2s graduate to adulthood, there will be a dramatic spike in your economy, and you ought to be prepared to mitigate that, because if you're not, you will be in trouble. But beyond that, it seems to, in theory, be workable. Now we need some field tests. What happens if we do go through with this? In that we will not make it illegal to purchase goods that are otherwise considered illegal. We will just make it prohibitively expensive, meaning that I think it was Chris Tucker joke, where somebody gets shot with a $2,000 bullet, and when somebody is found with 5 bullet holes, they really must have hated him. And that's what we're going for here. We're going for expensive bullets. And despite this particular test rising out of a joke, it does indeed seem to work, at least well enough to be added to the pile of emergency goods, so that if we actually do encounter this situation as a society, we have some outline of what we can do. Might not be good enough to actually be implemented, but if there's an emergency and it fits, at least we have an outline. So that seems to be it. I'm thinking of Stellaris, EU3, or Crusader Kings, but I'm having a hard time in the Crusader Kings on which timeline to continue. So that might not be until I settle on which one is good. Stellaris is at a good point, so I might play one one more colony. EU3 is at a very good point. Everybody's at peace. My trade efficiency is 200. And I'm starting to make trade embargoes on the nations that are in the hostile camp because trade efficiency at 200 is not raisable anymore. It doesn't go to like 201%. It's maxed at 200. And every time you try to do a trade embargo, it reduces it. So I'm just fairly randomly at this point going through the trade embargoes on nations that I know the Europeans or my nation will at some point in the future have hostility. I wouldn't want to do this. I would want the trade efficiency to raise to like 500 or something, but my hands are forced. I was doing a increase in relations campaign so I could have trade agreements which also lower the trade efficiency. But the countries kept having like different monarchs come into power and so on, and it reduced my relations to basically like what it was almost when I started. So I didn't see a point in continuing doing that because the trade agreements are going to be broken every now and then when the new monarchs and such come into force. So that's what I'm aiming for at the moment. Expanding slowly on the western side of the Great Lakes southward, but I'll be getting there at some point in the future. Watching the Huron fight the British colonials and almost taking the 13 colonies or what have you. And Crusader Kings is interesting. I'm trying to figure out which is more important, the timeline where I've gotten the religious reform done, or the timeline where my monarch has the highly inheritable good traits specialty from the event chain. And I haven't decided, so I'm kind of like undecided. I think it'll take a while, and I'm on the private side probably going to play Suikoden 4. It's been a while since I last played it, and I'm feeling a hankering for it. So Stellaris seems to be the one I'm aiming for. Maybe just like random 2 years of developing the provinces in EU3. Maybe there'll be 20 buildings in 2 years. Yeah, I might make a podcast later. Thank you for watching.